First of all, I think it's really important for people to understand whether it's the Maidan and all the financing that goes with it, or whether it is Al-Qaeda or the Syrian civil war, so-called. These are expensive, organized efforts. It's not cheap to pull out some change and buy a tank or anti-tank missiles or other armaments. These are big, expensive operations. The point is they're well organized, they're well financed. Typically, the CIA does a lot of that organization and financing. That's its role. Now, what is a very basic point is the CIA was established in 1947, basically as a secret army for the president or the security state of the United States. And its mission from 1947 until today has been to bring down the Soviet Union, then to bring down Russia. Of course, it has brought down dozens of other governments as well, because another part is if one day in the White House somebody briefs the president and says, we don't think that guy's a good guy, typically it ends up, well, get rid of him. President usually doesn't say assassinate him, or maybe never says that, but says, well, he's inconvenient. And then something happens, like what happened to Mr. Lumumba in the DRC, or what happens then the Congo, the Belgian Congo, or what happens, or the newly independent Congo, or well, there are countless cases of this.
Over 50.
So when the CIA got going, it realized a basic geographic point, which is that the kind of the periphery of Russia is Islamic regions. And therefore, one way to go after the Soviet Union was to arm Muslim fighters fighting for their religion or fighting their national cause. And so the link of the CIA and Islamist fighters goes back to the 40s and the 1950s. It's not something recent. In its recent incarnation, it started in 1979 when Zbig Brzezinski had this clever idea to entrap the Soviet Union in Afghanistan by the US CIA funding and arming the Mujahideen, which was the Islamist fighters coming from the Middle East to Afghanistan to antagonize, threaten, or overthrow the Soviet-backed government. And Brzezinski was very pleased with himself, saying that this is the bait for the Soviets to invade, and then that will be their Vietnam. And in some ways it was, and Brzezinski was more or less content to sacrifice Afghanistan to the cause of fighting the Soviet Union, because basically Afghanistan was destroyed. It went from 1979 until today that Afghanistan was destroyed by this little adventure. Now, one of the people that came to Afghanistan, of course, was Osama bin Laden.
Right.
And he was the founder of Al-Qaeda, meaning the base or the foundation.
Right.
But that was the American, he was a CIA paid person. He did get disgusted with the U.S. hypocrisy. He got disgusted with what he regarded as American insults to the Islamic world and to his own country, Saudi Arabia. He wrote all of this in a letter to Americans in 2002 after 9/11. But this is solid documentary history. So the idea, oh, shock, Al-Qaeda somehow US-backed? Well, come on, please grow up. This has been a process for many, many decades. In 2011, President Obama, at the deep state instigation, and I think basically at Netanyahu's instigation, decided that the CIA would work with the countries you mentioned to topple Bashar al-Assad. And in 2012, Obama signed Operation Timber Sycamore, which was the presidential finding assigning the CIA with the operation of the objective of overthrowing Bashar al-Assad, something that happened at the end of 2024. So that was a long adventure, several 100,000 deaths. But as I say, the U.S. doesn't count the dead. This was a, quote, successful operation. But of course, this is a long story, and it's part of a long history, and there's a lot of continuity to American foreign policy. I just find it pretty abhorrent how much violence and bloodshed there is in it.
Yeah, we just have a few minutes left, so I suggest we end with the worst case scenario, because you write in your book there is, it's probably not a good chance, but it's a small chance that, you know, the Ukraine war will end up in nuclear Armageddon. You try to show that we are in the most, when it comes to nuclear weapons, in the most dangerous period since the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. And even if the chance is small, the result would be the end of like 90% of mankind, like basically 1,000 Holocausts. Sounds so exaggerated, but it wouldn't be. How can this be? Like, how did we get so close to the brink of nuclear total annihilation today? Let's end on a bad note.
You know, making the atomic bomb was a work of scientific genius. And it took the leading scientists of the age to understand that such a weapon was feasible and that it depended on the new quantum mechanics and the atomic physics, and that fission in a self-sustaining way was possible. Of course, it was leading German scientists in the 1930s that discovered a lot of this process. Many of them came to the United States and were part of the Manhattan Project, which developed the atomic bomb. I mention this because one of my wonderful colleagues at Columbia University said, we were smart enough to develop the bomb, we should be smart enough to control it. And I just added a footnote, which is a few geniuses were smart enough to develop the bomb, and then they gave it to a bunch of idiots who are managing the bomb.
Right.
The physicists knew right at the beginning, oh my God, some of them said after Germany's defeat in May 1945, let's stop the Manhattan Project before it even completes. This is too dangerous. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, Robert Oppenheimer, who was heading the Manhattan Project, kind of in a pride that we've brought it this far, said, no, we should finish it and then control it. But he quickly lost control to the U.S. security state, which took over, said to the scientists, thank you very much, removed Oppenheimer's security clearance, and the bomb fell into the hands of a bunch of violent, narrow-minded, and pretty ignorant people who were the leaders of the U.S. deep state. Now, this is our situation, which is that you have genius, Edward Teller, who was the so-called father of the thermonuclear bomb, which brings total annihilation within reach, was a physics genius. But honestly, did we have to develop the thermonuclear bomb so that now we're at the knife edge of survival of humanity itself? And then who runs things afterwards? So the physicists, they have felt for decades now, by and large, with a few exceptions, we've got urgently to get this under control. And in 1947, they unveiled a graphic explanation, help to the U.S. public and the world public, called the Doomsday Clock, to say how close are we to nuclear Armageddon. And they set the minute hand at 7 minutes to midnight in 1947. And that minute hand during peace has gone farther away from midnight to 17 minutes to midnight in 1992 after the supposed end of the Cold War. But then with the Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, Trump won, and Biden won, every American president has brought that hand closer to midnight so that today the clock is at 90 seconds to nuclear Armageddon. And I know that the Bulletin is about to release an update later in this month, actually, at the end of January 2025. So we'll see what their judgment is at this moment. 90 seconds is too close to comfort. We're talking about the possible end of the world. And last year in the US, there was a bestseller book, an extraordinary book called Nuclear War, A Scenario, by an investigative journalist named Annie Jacobson, which describes minute to minute, sometimes second to second, how a total nuclear war unfolds over a 2-hour period to destroy the world, all based on generally declassified, but the serious analytics of how such a war would unfold. It's horrifying. I listened to it as an audiobook. It's horrifying to read. It's horrifying to listen to as an audiobook, but it's necessary reading because this is really our situation right now. Now, at the end of 2024, Biden or people acting in Biden's name authorized the use of U.S. attack of missiles to strike deep inside of Russia. Putin had already said, that's a red line. When you use attack of missiles, that's not Ukraine doing that. That is U.S. Military targeting those missiles, guiding those missiles. That cannot be done by Ukrainians. Right. Ukraine may say, press the button, so-called, but it's Americans that are actually deploying those weapons. And now they're deploying those weapons to hit inside Russia. And then when you hear, well, this could escalate to nuclear war, then our absolutely foolish politicians say, oh, don't be bluffed. Don't give in to nuclear blackmail. Please, these politicians are absolutely disgusting, insufferable. I don't want to know after the fact that, oh, it wasn't a bluff. They won't even have the time to tell me it wasn't a bluff. We should not be shooting missiles deep into Russia and then figuring out, well, was it a 1% chance that it was a bluff or a 5% chance that it was a bluff? And maybe, sorry, it wasn't a bluff. I'm so sorry, I misjudged. What are we doing? This is sheer, reckless, useless, senseless provocation. It happened, by the way, with a U.S. president that we are learning more and more was mentally incapacitated by the end of his term. Not all there. He's an old man, and he's gone away. Somebody signed an order in his name. Maybe he understood, maybe he didn't understand. I don't care if he was, 50 years old and completely with it. This was a reckless order. Now, just to say in the German context, please do not send Taurus missiles into this mess right now. Germany is right there. That is useless. It accomplishes nothing except raise the stakes for nuclear war. Please don't do it for all of our sake, because the nuclear war isn't going to stop in Germany. It's not going to stop in Ukraine. If it happens, it's going to destroy the world. Stop being reckless. Go to Moscow or invite President Putin to come to Berlin and negotiate and discuss. It's not sending missiles against each other and then figuring out after the fact, Was it a bluff or wasn't it a bluff?
Professor Sachs, I would like to thank you. I would also like to thank you for being, for many decades, you've been a voice of the voiceless, sorry for being a bit romantic here almost, but you've also spoken up often for the poorest of the poor, the extreme poor. There are about 1 billion people around the world today. We didn't speak about poverty today and the economic system and its injustices around the world. But I've been to Africa and India, and I've often been shocked by children without enough food, without shoes and so on. And so I would like to thank you for that. You always try to make the rich countries do more about that, about extreme poverty. And in recent years, you've been a voice for the people who were affected by the West's wars. Of course, you care about dictatorships too, and the wars of Russia and China, but you are an American, so you take that responsibility.
If I could just say,
Sure.
The reason I pursue this is that I was lucky to grow up in a comfortable, safe, and secure environment.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in an upper middle class family. I was able and was blessed to have a good education. And as an economist, I know we are so rich in this world. It's not like I'm saying, well, there are poor and we should make every sacrifice. I'm saying something actually a little different, which is there are poor and we are so rich beyond imagining.
Right.
And we're not even helping a child to be in school. Are we kidding? Could this conceivably be the right way to organize our lives, to make a safe planet, to live in a decent feeling? So I'm not calling for moral heroics. I'm calling for basic sense.
Yes.
Let's not blow ourselves up. Let's stop the wars, and let's help people who have nothing have enough to survive with dignity and get on with their lives.
Yes. And also, I didn't mean to put you in the box of like just a bleeding heart leftist without a brain. You are a great scientist, and you do want to make things work for the poor.
Yes.
But they do need compassion, and they do need resources
and
also.
We need some sense. Some
Common
basic
sense.
Common sense.
Yes. So I thank you so much, Professor Sachs.
Great to be with you.
It was a
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.